The laptop screen cast a harsh glow across my face as I stared at the email thread, my fingers hovering motionless over the keyboard. 3 hours had passed since I'd accidentally stumbled into Ryan's account, left open on our shared computer, and I still couldn't process what I was reading. I'm Iris, and until tonight, I thought I understood my marriage. Have you managed to keep her focused where we discussed? Evelyn's message read. Remember, darling, a wife who feels too independent becomes difficult to guide. Our plan needs patience. My husband's response made my stomach turn. Don't worry, Mother. Iris still thinks everything's her idea. The transfer will happen soon enough. The words blurred as tears threatened to spill. I blinked them back, refusing to cry. The timestamp showed this exchange happened just yesterday, while Ryan and I were planning our future together over dinner. While he smiled and nodded at my career goals, he was plotting with his mother to, what exactly? Control me? Steal from me? My phone buzzed. Ryan's face lit up the screen. Hey, beautiful? Running late at the office? Don't wait up. I cleared my throat. No problem. Everything okay? Just finishing up some reports. Miss you. The casual lie in his voice made my skin crawl. I'd seen his calendar. He had dinner scheduled with Evelyn tonight, another secret meeting to discuss their plan. Miss you too, I managed, the words tasting like ash. After hanging up, I scrolled through months of correspondence between them. Each message revealed new layers of manipulation. They discussed everything from undermining my confidence at work to slowly isolating me from my friends. Even my recent promotion had been a source of concern for them. She's getting too ambitious, Evelyn had written. Remember what happened with your father when he started believing he could make decisions without me. The front door clicked open downstairs. I quickly closed the laptop and moved to our bedroom, mind racing. Ryan's footsteps on the stairs were steady, unhurried, the pace of a man who believed his secrets were safe. You're still up? He appeared in the doorway, loosening his tie. The familiar gesture seemed sinister now, like watching an actor perform a well-rehearsed role. Couldn't sleep. I forced a smile. How was work? Brutal. These quarterly reports are killing me. He sat on the bed, reaching for my hand. You okay? You look tense. I let him take it, studying his face. The concern in his eyes seemed genuine, and that was perhaps the most terrifying part. He'd gotten so good at this. Actually, I wanted to talk about something. I kept my voice steady. I've been thinking about our joint account. His fingers twitched almost imperceptibly against mine. What about it? I'm considering separating our finances, for tax purposes. The flash of panic in his eyes confirmed everything. He recovered quickly, but not quickly enough. Why would you want to do that? His tone was carefully neutral. We've always handled everything together, as partners. Partners. The word hung between us like a bad joke. Just a thought, I said, pulling my hand away. We can discuss it tomorrow. You must be tired after dinner with your mother. He froze for a split second. What? Oh, sorry, I meant after your late meeting. My mistake. The silence that followed was deafening. Ryan's face went through a series of micro-expressions: surprise, fear, calculation, and finally, something close to anger. Have you been checking my calendar? His voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Does it matter? I met his gaze steadily. We're partners, aren't we? He stood up abruptly. I need a shower. As the bathroom door closed behind him, I heard him pulling out his phone, no doubt calling Evelyn, reporting this unexpected development in their careful plans. I lay back on the bed, mind already racing ahead. They thought they were so clever, playing their long game, but they'd forgotten something crucial. I wasn't the same naive woman they'd started manipulating 3 years ago, and now that I knew the truth, I had plans of my own. 3 days after discovering the emails, I came home to find Evelyn's Mercedes parked in our driveway. Moving boxes were stacked by the front door, and the sound of her voice drifted from inside our house, my house, like poison in the air. Really, darling, the guest room is perfect. I can keep an eye on everything from there. I stood frozen on the doorstep, my work bag suddenly heavy on my shoulder. Ryan appeared in the hallway, carrying another box. "Surprise?" he beamed, as if he'd just arranged the most thoughtful gift. "Mom's pipes burst at her place. She'll be staying with us for a while." The calculated timing was impressive. Of course she'd show up now, just when I was starting to piece together their scheme. "How long is a while?" I managed to ask. "Oh, don't worry about that, dear." Evelyn emerged from the guest room, her perfectly manicured hands clasped together. "The contractor said it could be weeks, maybe months, but I'll make myself useful. I know how overwhelmed you've been lately." My fingers tightened around my bag strap. "I'm not overwhelmed." Now. She patted my arm as she passed, her touch light but somehow invasive. "Ryan tells me you've been acting rather stressed, checking his calendar, asking about finances. That's not like you at all." The look she gave me was pure concern, but her eyes were sharp as razors. Ryan shifted uncomfortably between us. "I thought having Mom here might help," he said. "You know, take some pressure off." "Pressure," I repeated. The word tasted bitter. "Right." That night, I lay awake listening to their muffled voices from downstairs. The guest room shared a wall with our bedroom, and I could hear Evelyn unpacking, each drawer closing like a countdown to something inevitable. My phone lit up with a text from Ryan. "Coming to bed soon. Love you." He was 20 feet away in our own house, texting instead of speaking. The distance wasn't physical anymore. The next morning, I found Evelyn reorganizing my kitchen cabinets. "The flow was all wrong," she explained, not looking up. "Ryan always said you struggled with organization. But don't worry, I'll fix everything." I opened my mouth to object, but she was already continuing. "Oh, and I took the liberty of canceling your dinner plans with Sarah tonight. Ryan mentioned you've been working so hard lately. You need rest, not social obligations." My coffee cup hit the counter harder than intended. "You did what?" "It's for the best, dear. Sarah's influence hasn't been beneficial lately, all that talk about independent women and career advancement." She smiled, sugar sweet. "Sometimes friends can plant dangerous ideas." The pieces clicked together. Sarah had been encouraging me to apply for a director position, a promotion that would put me ahead of Ryan in salary. "I can manage my own social calendar," I said, keeping my voice level. "Of course you can, dear." She reached up to pat my cheek. "But as Ryan's mother, it's my duty to protect this marriage. We wouldn't want you making any impulsive decisions." The threat was clear beneath her words. I stepped back, my mind racing. They were moving faster than I'd anticipated, already working to isolate me. That evening, Ryan came home early for the first time in months. He found me in our home office, supposedly working late. "Mom made dinner," he said, hovering in the doorway. "Your favorite." I didn't look up from my laptop. "Not hungry?" He sighed. "Iris, I know this is an adjustment, but Mom means well. She just wants to help." "Help with what, exactly?" The question hung between us. I finally looked at him, really looked at him. The man I married was still there somewhere, buried beneath layers of his mother's manipulation. But I couldn't reach him anymore. "Come down to dinner," he said softly. "Please? For me?" I closed my laptop. "Of course. Wouldn't want to disappoint anyone." As I followed him downstairs, I could feel Evelyn's satisfaction radiating through the house. She thought she was tightening her grip, but she'd made a crucial mistake. In trying to control every aspect of my life, she'd given me a front-row seat to their operation, and I intended to take careful notes. The bank statement trembled in my hands as I stared at the transaction history. Over the past 6 months, nearly $40,000 had been siphoned from our joint savings account through a series of small transfers. Each one labeled as household expenses or maintenance costs, all authorized by Ryan. I'd been tracking the money trail for weeks, watching our account balance dwindle while Evelyn paraded around in new designer outfits, and Ryan made excuses about inflation and rising costs. But seeing the full scope of their deception made my chest tight with rage. A knock at my office door startled me. "Come in," I called, quickly minimizing the browser window. "Mrs. Mitchell?" My assistant poked her head in. There's a David Carter here to see you. Says it's personal? The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Evelyn's ex-husband. What could he possibly want? Send him in. David Carter looked nothing like I'd imagined from Evelyn's bitter descriptions of her failure of an ex. He was tall, distinguished, with kind eyes that carried a familiar wariness I recognized from my own mirror. Iris, he said, closing the door behind him. I hope you'll forgive the intrusion, but when I heard Evelyn moved in with you and Ryan... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Let's just say I couldn't stay silent anymore. How did you know where to find me? My wife Sophia works in marketing too. Different firm, but same circles. He sat down, his expression grave. We've been watching Evelyn's patterns repeat themselves. The same tactics she used to destroy our marriage, she's using on you. My throat tightened. The money. He nodded. Started small with us too. Then suddenly, I was drowning in debt I couldn't explain. By the time I figured it out, he pulled out his phone, scrolling through some documents. Well, let's just say you're catching on faster than I did. The office door burst open. Ryan stood there, his face flushed with anger. What the hell is this? Ryan, I started, but he cut me off. Mother warned me you might try something like this. His voice shook. Meeting with her ex-husband, behind my back? David stood slowly. Your mother warned you because she knew I'd tell the truth about her. About what she did to our family. Get out. Ryan's hands were clenched into fists. You have no right to be here. Actually, I said, standing up, I invited him. The lie came easily. Because I needed answers about the $40,000 you and your mother stole from our savings. The color drained from Ryan's face. That's not... I can explain. Mrs. Bennett? My assistant appeared behind Ryan looking concerned. Security is on their way up. That won't be necessary, David said calmly. I'm leaving. But Iris, my wife, and I would love to have you over for dinner sometime, when you're ready to hear the whole story. He handed me a business card and walked out, leaving Ryan and me in a silence thick with unspoken accusations. You had no right, Ryan finally said, his voice low and dangerous. That money was for our future. Our future, I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. Or your mother's shopping addiction. She needed help. After everything she's done for us. For you, I corrected. Everything she's done for you. And now you're letting her destroy our marriage, just like she destroyed hers. His face hardened. You don't understand anything about my mother. No, I said quietly. But I'm starting to understand everything about you. That night I sat in my car outside David and Sophia's house, their business card crumpled in my hand. Through their window I could see them moving around their kitchen, cooking together, laughing. They looked peaceful, happy. My phone buzzed with another text from Ryan. Where are you? Mom's worried. Of course she was. Her carefully constructed web was starting to unravel, and she could feel her grip loosening. I took a deep breath and got out of the car. It was time to learn exactly what I was up against, and more importantly, how to fight back. As I walked toward their front door, I felt something shift inside me. The last traces of doubt and guilt melting away, replaced by a cold, clear purpose. They wanted to play games with my life? Fine. But they were about to learn I was done playing by their rules. Sophia's kitchen smelled like fresh coffee and honesty, a combination I hadn't experienced in weeks. She placed a manila folder on the table between us, her expression gentle but firm. Before you open this, she said, you need to understand something. What happened to David wasn't just about money. It was about control. My hands hovered over the folder. Inside were copies of bank statements, court documents, and photographs spanning David and Evelyn's marriage. Each page told a story of calculated destruction, assets drained, relationships poisoned, reality twisted until truth became whatever Evelyn declared it to be. She convinced him he was losing his mind, Sophia continued, made him doubt every decision, every memory. By the end, he couldn't even trust himself to manage his own bank account. The parallels made my stomach lurch. I thought about the mistakes I'd been making lately, Appointments I supposedly forgot, conversations I supposedly misremembered. How Ryan would exchange knowing looks with his mother, their concern masking something darker. My phone buzzed. Another message from Ryan. Meeting got canceled, coming home early. We need to talk. They're accelerating their timeline, I said, showing Sophia the text. Ever since David showed up at my office. They're scared. She leaned forward. You're not following their script anymore. I flipped through more documents, stopping at a familiar name, Carter Engineering Solutions. This was David's company? Built it from nothing. Evelyn convinced him to add her name to the incorporation documents. For tax purposes, she said. 6 months later, she'd transferred controlling interest to herself and pushed him out of his own business. My hands started shaking. Last week, Ryan had suggested I add him as a partner to my freelance consulting business, for tax purposes. I have to go, I said, standing abruptly. I need to get to the bank before... The next text from Ryan stopped me cold. Mom's handling some paperwork for us. She says it's urgent. Don't go home, Sophia said, reading my expression. Stay here tonight. We can help you figure out... No. I gathered my things, mind racing. If I don't show up, they'll know something's wrong. I need to keep playing along until I can protect myself legally. The drive home felt like entering enemy territory. Ryan's car was already in the driveway, along with Evelyn's Mercedes. Through the living room window, I could see them sitting together, heads bent over documents. Inside, the air felt thick with anticipation. Ryan looked up with relief that seemed almost genuine. There you are. Mom's been helping me organize our finances, making everything more efficient. Evelyn smiled, sliding a stack of papers across the coffee table. Just a few signatures needed, dear. Standard power of attorney forms, in case anything happens to you, of course. Ryan needs to be able to manage your affairs. My pulse roared in my ears as I picked up the papers, pretending to read them. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I forced myself to sit down instead. Actually, I said carefully, I've been thinking about our financial situation too. Ryan and Evelyn exchanged a quick glance. I'd like to meet with a financial advisor first, I continued, someone independent, to review everything. That won't be necessary, Evelyn said sharply. Then, softening her tone, we're family, dear. Family takes care of its own. I looked at Ryan, really looked at him, searching for any trace of the man I'd married. His eyes dropped to the floor. You're right, I said, picking up the pen. Family does take care of its own. I scribbled something that looked nothing like my signature on the last page, buying myself time. Tomorrow, I'd visit my lawyer with David's documents. Tonight, I needed to secure copies of our records before they disappeared. There, I smiled, standing up. All done. I should get some work done before bed. As I headed upstairs, I heard Evelyn's satisfied murmur. See? I told you she'd cooperate eventually. In our bedroom, I opened my laptop and began transferring files to a secure drive. My fake signature wouldn't hold up under scrutiny, I knew that. But it didn't need to. It just needed to keep them confident, while I dismantled their plan piece by piece. The weight of their betrayal pressed against my chest, but something else was growing stronger. Determination. They thought they were closing their trap, but they'd just given me exactly what I needed, proof of their intentions. Now the real work could begin. The annual Mitchell family dinner always felt like a performance, but tonight the air crackled with something darker. Evelyn had invited the entire extended family to celebrate our growing bonds. 20 relatives packed into our dining room, watching me serve the meal she'd insisted on planning. Iris, dear, the plates go on the left, Evelyn called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. Though I suppose attention to detail isn't your strong suit lately. Ryan's cousins exchanged knowing looks. I set down the plates, my hands steady despite the rage building in my chest. For 2 weeks, I'd been gathering evidence, moving money, preparing my escape. I just needed to maintain the facade a little longer. Speaking of attention to detail, Evelyn continued, raising her voice further, Ryan tells me you've been making some concerning decisions at work. Turning down that lateral move he suggested? I froze. The lateral move was actually a demotion Ryan had tried to convince me to take. one that would have put me under his department's control. I'm happy in my current position, I said carefully. Happiness isn't everything, dear. Sometimes we need others to guide us when we're not thinking clearly. She turned to the table. Did I tell you all about the time Iris forgot to pay our property taxes? Thank goodness Ryan caught it in time. My fingers tightened around the serving spoon. I hadn't forgotten. Ryan had intercepted the mail and hidden the notice, then saved the day by paying it himself. Another piece of their gaslighting puzzle. Mother, Ryan warned softly, but Evelyn was on a roll. And now she's been meeting with strange men during work hours. That David Carter fellow? She shook her head sadly. When someone starts hiding things from their spouse. The serving spoon clattered to the floor. The room went silent. Would you like to know what I was really discussing with David? My voice came out surprisingly calm. We were talking about how you destroyed his company, how you're trying to do the same thing to me. Iris, Ryan stood up, his face flushing. That's enough. No, it's not. I pulled out my phone, opening the folder of evidence I'd been collecting. Should we discuss the $40,000 you stole from our savings? Or the power of attorney forms you tried to trick me into signing? Evelyn's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and calculating beneath. Ryan, I think your wife is having another one of her episodes. Episodes? I laughed, the sound sharp and foreign. Like the ones you convinced David he was having before you took everything from him? You're embarrassing yourself, Ryan hissed, grabbing my arm. And you're upsetting Mother. I yanked away from him, addressing the shocked faces around the table. Did any of you know that Evelyn's broken pipes were a lie? That she moved in here to help Ryan isolate me from my friends? To gain control of my assets? That's absurd, Evelyn said, but several relatives shifted uncomfortably. They'd seen this before, I realized. They'd watched her do it to others. Show them the papers, Ryan, I challenged. Show them what you and your mother were trying to get me to sign. Instead of responding, Ryan turned to the guests. I'm so sorry, everyone. Iris has been under a lot of stress lately. Mother's been trying to help, but... Always the devoted son, I said quietly. Tell me, does it bother you that she's using the exact same playbook on me that she used on your father? Or does it feel normal now, watching her destroy someone else's life? The silence that followed was deafening. Evelyn stood slowly, her composure cracking. I will not be spoken to this way in my own... Your home? I cut her off. This isn't your home, but you're right about one thing. I pulled off my wedding ring, letting it fall onto the dining table with a hollow ping. I don't belong here anymore. As I walked out, leaving the chaos behind me, I heard Ryan calling my name. But it was Evelyn's voice that followed me to the door, sharp with fury. You'll regret this, when you have nothing left. No. I turned back one last time. That's where you're wrong. For the first time since I met your son, I finally have everything I need. The truth. The door closed behind me with a satisfying click. In my car, my phone lit up with messages from Ryan's relatives, some expressing shock, others sharing their own stories of Evelyn's manipulation. The facade had cracked, and the truth was spilling out. It wasn't the revenge I'd planned, but somehow, this felt better. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about exposing them to the light. The police officer's flashlight beam cut through my car window, momentarily blinding me. Step out of the vehicle, Mrs. Mitchell. 3 hours after walking out of the family dinner, I'd returned home to collect some essentials. Instead, I found 2 police cruisers in my driveway and Ryan standing with Evelyn, his face a mask of concern. She's been acting erratically, I heard Evelyn say as I got out. We're worried she might harm herself, or others. The second officer was already searching my car. Ma'am, your husband says you took some important financial documents. He's concerned about your state of mind. Those documents prove they've been stealing from me. My voice shook despite my efforts to stay calm. Call my lawyer. She has copies. Your lawyer? Ryan stepped forward, perfect worry lines creasing his forehead. Honey, you don't have a lawyer. This paranoia started when you began meeting with Mother's ex-husband. The officers exchanged looks. Of course they'd believe him. the concerned husband, the devoted son protecting his mother. I'd played right into their hands by coming back alone at night. "Check my phone," I said. "The evidence." But my phone wasn't in my pocket. With horrifying clarity, I remembered setting it down on the kitchen counter when I'd come inside. Through the window, I could see Evelyn watching me, my phone visible in her hand. "Mrs. Mitchell," the first officer said gently, "we can do this voluntarily, or we can make it official. Your family's arranged for a psychiatric evaluation, for your own safety." The pieces clicked together. This was their endgame, not just controlling me, but discrediting me entirely. Once I was committed, even temporarily, everything I'd said about them would be dismissed as delusions. "Ryan," I turned to him, searching for any trace of the man I'd married. "You know what she's doing. You know this isn't right." Something flickered in his eyes. Doubt, maybe even guilt. But then Evelyn's hand touched his arm and his expression hardened. "I just want you to get help," he said. "Mother knows an excellent facility." "I bet she does?" I laughed, the sound bordering on hysteric. "Let me guess. The same one David ended up in before she took his company." "See how she obsesses over these conspiracy theories?" Evelyn's voice dripped with concern. "Officers, please, before she hurts herself." The police moved closer. Fight or flight instinct kicked in, but both options would only prove their point about my instability. I had to think bigger, longer term. "Okay," I said quietly. "I'll go voluntarily, but I want to call someone first." "I don't think," Evelyn started, but the officer nodded. "Supervised call only." I recited Sophia's number from memory, praying she'd understand what I couldn't say directly. When she answered, I kept my voice steady. "It's Iris. I'm at the house with Ryan and Evelyn. The police are here to take me for a psychiatric evaluation." I emphasized each word carefully. "Could you tell David I'm sorry I couldn't finish our business discussion about his old company records?" A pause. Then Sophia's voice, sharp with understanding. "Don't sign anything. We'll have someone there in 30 minutes. "That's enough," Evelyn snapped, moving to end the call. But it was enough. David's documented history with Evelyn, combined with the financial records I'd already given my lawyer, would raise too many questions for them to risk holding me. "Actually," the second officer said, checking his radio, "we just got a call from your lawyer, Mrs. Mitchell. She's requested we wait for her arrival." Evelyn's composure cracked. "This is ridiculous. My son has the right—" "Your son," I cut in, "doesn't have any rights over me. Those power of attorney papers were never legally signed." Ryan stepped toward me, but stopped when I flinched away. "Iris, please, let us help you." "Help me?" I looked between them, mother and son, their masks slipping to reveal the desperation beneath. "You never wanted to help me? You wanted to own me?" Flashing lights appeared at the end of the street, not police this time, but my lawyer's car. As it approached, I saw Evelyn's hand tighten on Ryan's arm, her nails digging in like talons. The game wasn't over, but the rules had changed. They'd pushed me to the edge, thinking I'd break. Instead, they'd given me exactly what I needed, proof of how far they'd go to maintain control. Now it was my turn to push back. The bank manager's office felt too small for the storm brewing inside it. Ryan sat across from me, his lawyer nervously shuffling papers, while my own attorney laid out documents like playing cards in a high-stakes game. "As you can see," she said, "these transfers were made without Mrs. Mitchell's knowledge or consent. Furthermore, we have evidence of systematic financial manipulation dating back 18 months. Ryan's face remained carefully blank, but his fingers drummed against his knee, a tell I'd learned to recognize during poker nights that felt like a lifetime ago. "There must be some mistake," his lawyer started, but I cut in. "Show him the Cayman accounts." The color drained from Ryan's face. "How did you—" "David kept excellent records," I said quietly, "including the offshore accounts Evelyn used to hide his company's assets before she took control. Funny how you used the exact same bank." A knock at the door made us all jump. The bank manager stepped back in, looking grave. "Mrs. Mitchell, the transfer you requested is complete. All joint accounts have been frozen pending investigation." Ryan's phone buzzed. I could picture Evelyn's name flashing on the screen, her carefully constructed world starting to crumble as her access to the money vanished. "You can't do this," Ryan's voice cracked. Your mother needs to pay back what she stole." I leaned forward. From me, from David, from everyone she's manipulated over the years, the DA is very interested in her pattern of financial exploitation. His phone buzzed again, more urgent this time. Ryan stared at it like a lifeline. "Go ahead," I said. "Answer it. Let her know that her safety net is gone, that her precious son can't fix this for her." Instead, he switched the phone off. For the first time since this began, I saw something shift in his eyes, like a spell breaking. "I never meant," he started, then stopped. "The money was supposed to be temporary, just until Mother got back on her feet." "Like it was temporary with David? With your father?" I pulled out one final document, a bank statement showing recent transfers to a private psychiatric facility. "Or were you planning to make me disappear like the others who stood up to her?" The lawyer beside him stiffened, clearly hearing this for the first time. "That wasn't... I wouldn't have..." Ryan's facade cracked completely. "She said it was for your own good, that you needed help. The only thing I needed was a husband strong enough to choose me over his mother's manipulation." A commotion outside the office drew our attention. Through the glass wall, I saw Evelyn arguing with security, her perfectly maintained appearance showing signs of strain. When she spotted me, her eyes narrowed with a hatred that made my skin crawl. "Mr. Mitchell," my lawyer said firmly, "your mother is not permitted on these premises during these proceedings. If she enters this room, we will add harassment to the charges." Ryan stood up, torn between decades of conditioning and the truth laying bare before him. For a moment, I saw the man I'd married, scared, confused, desperate for approval. "I did love you," he said softly. "I know. That's what made it so easy for her to use you against me." He moved toward the door, then paused. "What happens now?" "Now?" I met his gaze steadily. "Now you get to choose. But whatever you decide, I'm done being a character in your mother's power plays." As he stepped out, I heard Evelyn's voice rise. "Ryan, darling, tell them this is all a misunderstanding. Your wife is clearly unwell." The door closed, muffling their voices. Through the glass, I watched Ryan straighten his shoulders and, for the first time in our marriage, walk away from his mother's outstretched hand. My lawyer gathered the documents, her expression satisfied. "The criminal investigation will take time, but with David's evidence and the bank records..." I barely heard her. I was watching Evelyn's face as security escorted her out, her mask finally shattering to reveal the desperate, frightened woman beneath. The woman who'd spent her life destroying others to maintain control, only to end up more alone than ever. It wasn't the revenge I'd imagined, but somehow it felt more complete. Sometimes the best punishment isn't what you do to your enemies, but what they do to themselves when their lies finally catch up with them. The support group circle felt intimate yet exposed, like standing in a spotlight that illuminated only the truth. 12 women, each carrying stories that echoed fragments of my own. "My name is Iris," I said, my voice steady, "and I'm here because survival isn't enough anymore." The conference room at David and Sophia's law firm had become a sanctuary every Wednesday evening, a place where masks could fall away, where manipulation lost its power in the light of shared experience. "The criminal charges against Evelyn go to trial next month," I continued, "but that's not why I'm here. I'm here because yesterday, I saw a woman at my bank showing the same signs I missed 3 years ago. The controlled movements, the nervous glances at her husband, the careful answers about her own money." The door opened quietly, and Sarah, my friend from work, the one Evelyn had tried to separate me from, slipped in. She gave me an encouraging nod. "I watched this woman sign away her financial independence," I said, "and I realized that revenge wasn't what I needed. What I needed was to turn this pain into something useful." A text message lit up my phone. Ryan's name. I'd received dozens since the investigation began, each one a mixture of apology and justification. Each one deleted, unread. Some wounds weren't meant to be reopened. "The legal fund we're building," I gestured to the donation box by the door. isn't just about money. It's about giving women the resources I almost lost, the power to fight back before they lose themselves. Later in David's office, we reviewed the latest case files. 3 more women had come forward with stories about Evelyn's past schemes. The pattern stretched back decades, each victim isolated and discredited until they believed their own destruction was their fault. The DA thinks she'll take a plea deal, David said, his eyes tired but satisfied. Too much evidence, too many witnesses. And Ryan? Cooperating finally, though I suspect that has more to do with protecting himself than finding redemption. Through the window, I could see Evelyn's Mercedes being sold at auction, along with the other assets frozen by the investigation. The sight didn't bring the satisfaction I'd once craved. Instead, I felt something closer to peace, not because of what I'd taken from her, but because of what I'd reclaimed for myself. Sophia entered with a stack of intake forms. 3 new members for next week's group, word spreading. Good, I said, picking up my bag, but right now I have a bank to visit. The same teller who'd helped me freeze my accounts months ago recognized me immediately. She gestured subtly toward a woman filling out forms at a desk, the one I'd noticed yesterday, the one whose hands shook just like mine once had. I approached carefully, noting how she angled the paperwork away from view, a learned behavior hiding in plain sight. "Excuse me," I said softly. "I couldn't help but notice you're filling out power of attorney forms." She stiffened, a flash of fear crossing her face. "My husband says it's necessary for tax purposes." The familiar words hit like an echo. I placed one of our support group cards on her desk. "Before you sign," I said, "I'd like to tell you a story about tax purposes, about a woman who almost lost everything because she trusted the wrong people to define her worth." She hesitated, then picked up the card. Our eyes met, and I saw something spark behind her uncertainty, the same ember of defiance I'd discovered in myself. "Would you like to hear that story?" I asked. She glanced at the unsigned forms, then back at me. Nodded slowly. As we walked toward the coffee shop across the street, I felt the weight of my own journey settle into something stronger than revenge, more lasting than justice. Every woman who found her way to our group was another link in a chain of resistance, each one stronger for having been tested. The story wasn't over, but at least now we were the ones writing it.
"Kate, how much did you inherit?" Mark's voice cut through the heavy silence of the night. "Your dad was loaded. I need to know what you got." The words felt like slaps in the face. I looked at my husband, searching for any sign that this was some misguided attempt to comfort me. But his eyes were cold, calculating. Tonight of all nights, my father's funeral, and this is where his mind was? "Nothing," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "There wasn't anything left by the time the medical bills were paid." Mark's lip curled into a sneer. "Really? Is that the story you're sticking with?" I stood my ground. "Yes, it is." He scoffed and turned away, mumbling something about how incompetent my brother Mike must have been in handling everything. I could feel the unease settle deep in my gut. Mark's true intentions were becoming clear, and they weren't pretty. I moved to the kitchen, needing a moment away from his probing eyes. I started the kettle, hoping a cup of tea might soothe my nerves, but the quiet clinking of the spoon in my mug did nothing to drown out the alarming thoughts racing through my head. Mark's voice reached me even from the other room. "I need a drink," he grumbled, the sound of him rummaging through the liquor cabinet, loud and grating. How had I missed these signs? Or had I just ignored them, hoping things would magically get better? He walked into the kitchen, glass of whiskey in hand. "You know, I thought marrying you meant a step up in the world," he said bluntly. But apparently I was wrong. I didn't reply. Words felt useless against his blatant greed. I just stared into my tea, feeling more alone than ever. After a tense silence, he finally left the room. I heard the TV flicker on, blaring some mindless show. I clenched my fists around the mug. This was the moment, right now, where everything broke open. I couldn't ignore who he was anymore, and I certainly couldn't let him have any power over my future. I decided to keep a closer watch on him. It was clear now that I couldn't trust him, that whatever affection we once shared had withered away, replaced by his hunger for wealth and status. A few days later, I received a call from my mother, Paula. She didn't offer condolences or ask how I was doing, just launched into complaints about sorting out Dad's affairs. Typical. She always favored Mike, and I was used to being the afterthought. "Kate, I need you to help with the house," she droned. "Sure, Mom," I replied mechanically. "I'll be over tomorrow." "Bring Mark," she added. "We could use a man's help." I felt my frustration spike, but kept my voice even. "Mark's busy. It'll just be me." The call ended abruptly, and I sat there, the phone still pressed to my ear long after she hung up. Mark breezed into the room just then, sipping another whiskey. "Spout, pack your things," I said suddenly. He looked at me, puzzled. "What for?" "We're going to Mom's tomorrow. She needs help with Dad's stuff." He scowled. "Are you serious? I have better things to do." "You're coming," I replied firmly, our eyes locking in a silent battle. Eventually, he shrugged and walked away. That night, as I lay in bed, I listened to his soft snores and felt a pit of fear and determination grow within me. This facade was crumbling, and soon everything would come to light. It was time to brace myself for the storm. I pulled up to the old family home, a sense of dread settling over me. Mark sat in the passenger seat, tapping his fingers impatiently on the dashboard. "Let's get this over with," he muttered as he climbed out of the car. As we walked up the path, memories flooded back. The house looked the same, yet everything felt different. The door swung open, and there was Paula, her face a mix of annoyance and impatience. "It's about time," she snapped. "I've been dealing with everything on my own." I stepped inside, brushing past her coldness. "Mom, this is Mark," I introduced, though she'd met him briefly at the funeral. Paula glanced at him and nodded curtly before turning her back on us. "Mike's in the study, going through paperwork. You two can start in there." I followed her voice to the study, the room an organized mess of papers, file cabinets, and old mementos. Mike barely looked up as we entered. Seeing him again was like running into a brick wall. His smirk was as smug as ever. "Hey, big sis," he scoffed. "Finally showed up to pitch in?" "You might say that," I replied tersely. "Let's just get through this, all right?" Mark hovered by the bookshelf, shifting his weight and looking uncomfortable. Paula's voice echoed from the hallway, giving orders like a drill sergeant. I rolled up my sleeves and dipped into the dreariness of sorting through years of memories and documents. Hours passed, the air thick with unspoken tension and strained small talk. Mark wandered out, leaving me to fend for myself with Paula and Mike. "This is pointless," Mike grumbled, tossing another stack of papers aside. "Dad should have taken better care of this stuff." "Maybe if you'd helped him once in a while." I let the words trail off, biting back more I wanted to say, but Mike just ignored me, pulling out another drawer, searching for something of value. Just then Paula stormed in. "Oh, for heaven's sake," she said, her tone dripping with irritation. "Why are you two still in here? There's more to do in the garage." We moved to the garage, and I got hit by another wave of nostalgia mixed with frustration. Old boxes of Christmas decorations, tools my dad barely used, and a neglected bike Mike rode once before, demanding a new one. Mark had reappeared, leaning against the car and scrolling through his phone. I could sense his growing irritation. He wasn't here to help. He was here to gain. While I rummaged around, Paula fixed me with a hard look. "You know," she started, "your brother was always the responsible one. Your father and I could depend on him." My grip tightened on an old photo album. "Is that so?" "Yes," she snapped, clearly relishing the criticism. "Unlike you, running off when things got tough." I felt my pulse quicken, but I forced myself to breathe deeply. No point in arguing now. I glanced at Mark, who seemed to be barely masking his impatience. For the first time, I felt a flicker of anger at him, not just for his greed, but for what I now saw as a willful blindness to the person I had become. Eventually, exhausted and angry, we decided to call it a day. Mike and Paula stayed behind, and Mark and I drove home in silence. When we got there, Mark finally spoke. "Your family's something else, you know," he said, almost as if admiring them. "Tell me about it," I mumbled, feeling drained. As I shut the door behind us, I already knew this wasn't the end. Things were just beginning to unravel, and I had to be ready for whatever came next. The storm was coming, and this time I wouldn't be caught off guard. I met Mark when I was just getting by at a dull office job. It wasn't much, but it was steady, unlike my up-and-down family life. Mark walked into the office one day, suave and confident. He made me laugh during our coffee breaks, and soon enough we were dating. I thought he was my escape. One evening, I decided to take him to meet my family, hoping for some strange reason they'd approve. We drove to my old neighborhood, my anxiety growing with each mile. When we arrived, the door swung open, and there was my mother. "Who's this, then?" Paula asked, eyeing Mark up and down like he was another project to criticize. "It's Mark," I said, pushing down my nerves. "My husband." Paula's eyebrow arched. "Oh, finally snagged someone, did you?" Mark put his arm around me, trying to lighten the mood. "Nice to meet you, Paula. Kate's told me so much about you." She ignored his outstretched hand, focusing instead on who really mattered to her. "Come inside," she said curtly, turning toward the living room. Mike lounged on the couch, flipping through TV channels, not even bothering to look up. "Sup?" he muttered, finally glancing our way. I took a deep breath. "Mark, this is Mike, my brother." "Hey," Mark offered, but Mike just nodded, turning back to the screen. It hurt seeing how little they'd changed. Paula and Mike centered around their own little world. At dinner, the tension thickened with every passing minute. Paula gushed over Mike's recent promotion, never asking about my life or my job. I could see Mark trying to keep up, looking uncomfortable. "So, what do you do, Mark?" Mike asked suddenly, not out of interest but as a challenge. "I'm an investment consultant," he replied. Mike smirked. "Guess that pays the bills, huh?" "It does," Mark said flatly, his patience wearing thin. The real blow came later when I found my father seated alone in his study. He looked so different, frail and tired, with his breathing labored. It broke my heart. He'd been a distant but kind presence in my chaotic childhood, working tirelessly to provide for us. "Hey, Dad," I said softly, his eyes lighting up slightly at the sound of my voice. "Kate, you're here," he rasped, a weak smile appearing. We talked quietly, catching up on lost time. He confided in me, telling me how hard it had been to manage things lately, how disappointed he was in how Paula and Mike were handling everything. He looked pained, not just physically but emotionally. "I'm sorry, Kate," he whispered. "I wish I could have done more for you." I squeezed his hand. "It's okay, Dad. You did what you could." Leaving the room, my chest tightened. Mark was in the kitchen, watching the interaction between Paula and Mike, his face unreadable. "It's a mess," he whispered as we walked out. "Your family, I mean." "I know," I whispered back, my voice barely holding together. This visit had reminded me why I left. The toxic dynamic between my mother and brother, their constant need to belittle me, to treat me as an afterthought. Later that night, as we drove home in silence, I made a promise to myself. I would be there for my dad, but I wouldn't be used by anyone again. Not by Paula, not by Mike, and certainly not by Mark. A week after that unsettling visit, I got a call from my mother. Her voice was tense. "Your father's getting worse, Kate," she said. "We need help." I knew this day would come. "I'll come over today," I replied, already dreading the interaction that lay ahead. I drove to the house, my mind weighing heavy with the mix of obligation and resentment. Mark didn't come this time, claiming he had a meeting. Might have been true, but I doubted it. Paula met me at the door, her face stern. "He's in his room," she said without a hint of gratitude. "And don't touch the things in the living room. Mike's sorting through some important stuff." I nodded and walked towards my father's room. Dad was propped up in bed, looking frailer than ever. His eyes met mine, a weary smile forming. "Kate, good to see you," he said, his voice a whisper. "I'm here to help, Dad," I replied, taking his hand. Over the next few days, I fell into a routine of caring for him, administering his medication, making sure he was comfortable, and speaking softly to ease his pain. Paula and Mike mostly stayed in the background, with their true colors showing through their absence. One evening, I overheard a heated conversation in the living room. Paula's voice was shrill. "We need more money, Mike. Your father's hospital bills are eating up everything." "We can't sell the house yet," Mike replied. "People would talk." I paused outside the door, my anger simmering. They were already planning how to cash in, even as Dad lay dying in the next room. I entered the room, making no effort to hide my presence. "Is this really the time to be talking about money?" I snapped. Paula glared at me. "Don't you start. You disappeared for years while we dealt with everything." "Dealt with everything?" I echoed incredulously. "Is that what you call living off Dad while he worked himself into the ground?" Mike stood up, his eyes cold. "You have no idea what it's been like. You left. And I had every reason to leave. I shot back. Paula folded her arms. We'll see how long you last this time. That night, I sat by my father, listening to his labored breaths. He opened his eyes and looked at me, sadness mingled with relief. Kate, I'm so sorry for everything. My chest tightened. Dad, you don't have to apologize. He shook his head weakly. I wasn't there for you. Should have protected you from them. I couldn't hold back the tears. I'm here now. The following morning, I found Paula rifling through his drawer. I stood in the doorway, my voice cold as ice. What are you doing? She looked up, startled. Just organizing his things. Sure, I said, my tone flat. Because you've always been so organized, right? She slammed the drawer shut. Don't you dare judge me. I'm not judging, I'm observing, I replied, moving to sit by my father who had just woken up. The days dragged on with the same routine, the house thick with tension. Mike occasionally showed his face, usually to complain about something or another. I stayed focused, doing what I could for Dad. One evening, Dad's eyes sought mine with a seriousness I hadn't seen in a while. There's a bank account, he whispered. My heart skipped a beat. Bank account? He nodded, struggling for breath. Not much, but it's yours. Secret. Use it wisely, Kate. Tears welled up in my eyes as I realized the weight of his words. He'd done what he could to ensure I had something, a small act of protection amidst the chaos. I squeezed his hand, promising myself I would make it count. Knowing what I now did, I felt a flicker of hope and determination. My father's efforts wouldn't be in vain. I wouldn't let Paula, Mike, or even Mark control my fate any longer. This was just the beginning, and I was ready for whatever came next. The call came just after midnight. I had been tossing and turning in bed, my mind restless, when the phone rang, cutting through the silence. It's your father. Paula's voice was clipped, devoid of emotion. He's been taken to the hospital. I scrambled out of bed, barely replying as I threw on some clothes and grabbed my keys. By the time I reached the hospital, my heart was pounding with dread. I found Paula and Mike in the waiting area, looking annoyed rather than distressed. The doctors are with him, Paula said brusquely. We've been waiting for hours. I didn't bother to respond. Rushing past them, I found the room where Dad lay, surrounded by machines and tubes. He looked impossibly weak, barely recognizing me as I stepped closer. Kate, he murmured. I'm here, Dad, I whispered, clutching his hand. His grip was feeble but urgent. Remember, the account. It's for you. I know, I said, fighting back tears. I'll take care of it. Moments later, his breathing grew shallow. The monitors beeped frantically and nurses rushed in. I was gently but firmly pushed out of the room. Paula and Mike stood in the hallway, waiting as if they were bored. After what felt like an eternity, a doctor emerged, his face solemn. I'm sorry, he said. He didn't make it. Paula's face hardened, betraying nothing. Mike sighed, as if inconvenienced. I fought to keep my composure, feeling a mix of grief and rage. They didn't even care. Back at the house, it didn't take long for tensions to explode. As I gathered some of Dad's belongings, Mike cornered me in the hallway. What's this about a secret account? He demanded. I stared at him, anger flaring. None of your business. He stepped closer, his face contorted with a smirk. I know he said something to you. You think you're getting away with it? Paula appeared behind him, arms crossed. Don't hold out on us, Kate. Whatever your father left, it's family property. Don't you dare, I snapped, my voice shaking with incredulity. You two leeched off him your whole lives. This is mine. Mike lunged, grabbing my arm. You're not taking anything, you ungrateful. I yanked free, my temper boiling over. Get your hands off me! Mark chose that moment to stroll in, smirking as he took in the scene. What's all this commotion? Kate thinks she's entitled to Dad's secret stash, Mike sneered. Secret stash? Mark's eyes lit up greedily. Fed up? I turned to leave, but Paula blocked my path. You're not going anywhere, she spat. Not until you tell us where that money is. Over my dead body, I hissed, pushing past them. I stormed out, my heart racing. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about standing up to them, about breaking free from their grasp. I knew what I had to do, and I wasn't going to back down. That night, I sat in my apartment, clutching the small bank booklet Dad had given me. The modest sum was enough to start fresh, to carve out a new path for myself. Their selfishness and greed had pushed me too far. I wasn't the same naive girl they could push around. They were about to learn the hard way that I wasn't someone to mess with. From here on out, I would take control of my life. Their time of exploiting everything and everyone was over. The first steps of my plan were clear. The storm was here and I was ready to face it head-on. I returned to my apartment, the weight of my father's funeral still hanging heavily over me. I barely had time to process my own grief before Mark cornered me in the kitchen. "Kate," he started, his eyes hard with impatience, "we need to talk about the inheritance again." I felt a surge of anger. "We've been over this. There's nothing significant." His face twisted with frustration. "Stop lying. I overheard Mike talking about a secret account. Your dad must have left something worth hiding." I glared at him, feeling my blood boil. "And what if he did?" "It's none of your business." "None of my business," he scoffed, stepping closer. "I'm your husband. Whatever you have, I have a right to it too." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I didn't marry you so you could pocket my family's money, Mark." His eyes narrowed. "You're being ridiculous. Besides, there's something else you should know." I crossed my arms. "What now?" Mark hesitated for a split second before dropping the bombshell. "I've been seeing someone else." The room seemed to spin for a moment. I steadied myself against the counter. "What?" I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Lana," he said matter-of-factly. "Mike's girlfriend. We've been seeing each other for months." Suddenly everything fell into place. His aloofness, the constant pressure about the inheritance, it all made sense. He had been planning this all along. You vile?" I started, but he cut me off. "And that's not all," he continued, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a set of papers. "I want a divorce. Sign these." I stared at the divorce papers he placed on the counter, feeling a strange mix of anger and calm. Somehow his betrayal was almost a relief. It was the final confirmation that I needed to break free from him. I grabbed a pen and started signing. He watched me, clearly expecting more of a fight, but I was done. Finished. As I handed the papers back, I felt a sense of liberation. "Fine," I said, my voice steady. "Good riddance." A moment of silence passed, then Mark's smugness reappeared. "Hope you and your so-called inheritance are very happy." Just then, he walked out the door, leaving me alone in the kitchen. I sat down, breathing deeply, taking in the newfound sense of freedom. Mark was out of my life, and I couldn't be happier. The days that followed felt strangely bright despite the chaos. Mark had moved in with Lana, his dreams of wealth tied to her. Meanwhile, I used my father's modest inheritance to start planning for my future. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to rebuild. A couple of weeks later, the phone rang. It was Mike. "We need to talk," he said bluntly. "What now?" I replied, tired of their antics. "Mark," he spat out. "He moved in with Lana, thinking her family has money. They don't." I couldn't help but laugh. "Just desserts." "Good luck dealing with him," I said. "Not my problem anymore." "You're going to regret this," he hissed before hanging up. I leaned against the wall, feeling a small but satisfying victory. Mark's arrogance had led him right into a trap of his own making. As for me, I had a fresh slate and endless possibilities before me. Let them scheme and plot. I had learned the hard way how to stand up for myself, and nothing they did could take that away from me. I was finally free, ready to live life on my terms. The storm had come and gone, leaving me stronger and more determined than ever. And I wasn't done yet. I had plans, and nothing was going to stop me now. Mark's arrogant assumption that Lana's family had money proved to be his downfall. Within weeks, he was calling incessantly. At first, I ignored him, savoring the peace. One evening, the phone rang once more. I sighed and picked it up. "Hello?" "Kate, we need to talk." Mark's voice was desperate, a far cry from his usual arrogance. "Why? So you can try to worm your way back into my life?" I replied, my tone icy. "It's not like that," he pleaded. "Lana's family found out about us. They threw me out." I stifled a laugh, though I felt a tiny sense of satisfaction. "Not my problem," I said simply. "Kate, please," he continued, his voice wavering. "I made a mistake. We can fix this." I paused for a moment, savoring the irony. "You mean you finally realized what you had?" "Yes," he admitted, his voice almost a whisper. "I've been an idiot." "Well, I'm glad you admit it," I replied coolly. "But it's too late. You made your bed, Mark. Now lie in it." The silence stretched out between us, heavy and final. "Is that it, then?" he asked, his voice breaking. "That's it," I confirmed and hung up the phone. In the weeks that followed, I heard through the grapevine that Mark had been couch surfing, desperate and out of options. Mike had quickly distanced himself, blaming Mark for everything that went wrong and conveniently forgetting his own role in the mess. For once, I felt in control. I moved forward with my life, securing a small but significant freelance business. The inheritance my father left me became the seed money I needed. I poured my focus and determination into work, savoring the freedom and independence I had long craved. One crisp morning, while I was responding to client emails, the phone rang again. The caller ID showed Mike's number. I considered ignoring it, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello? You think you're so smart, don't you?" Mike's voice seethed with anger. "Dad's money was supposed to be for all of us. I earned it, Mike. You and Mom took everything else while Dad was alive," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I hope you're happy," he spat. "We're losing the house." I took a deep breath. His anger was almost palpable, but it no longer had power over me. "Maybe now you'll understand what it's like to work for something." "You'll regret this, Kate. I'll make sure of it," he snarled before hanging up abruptly. I set the phone down, feeling the weight of his threat. But instead of fear, I felt an unusual sense of calm. I had faced worse, and survived. What could Mike possibly do now? As the weeks turned into months, I flourished. My small freelance business grew, and for the first time in years, I felt grounded and secure. Every time I heard about Mike and Paula's growing financial troubles, a part of me felt vindicated. One evening, I sat in my small but cozy apartment, looking out over the city. I had come a long way, and the journey had been anything but easy. Yet, here I was, standing tall and moving forward. The ghosts of my past no longer haunted me. They were simply part of the story I had overcome. The phone rang again, but this time I didn't feel a jolt of anxiety. I picked it up calmly, ready for whatever came next. "Hello? Kate, it's Mom." She started, but I cut her off, my voice steady and firm. "I'm done, Mom. Take care of yourselves." I hung up, feeling a profound sense of closure. The storm had come and gone. I was free, strong, and finally living life on my own terms. The years rolled by quickly after I hung up on my mother. I poured everything into my freelance business, growing it from a side hustle into a thriving enterprise. The modest inheritance from Dad turned out to be more than just financial stability. It was the foundation for a new life. My new apartment, though small, felt like a palace. It was mine, a space free of the shadows of my past. I spent comfortable evenings reading by the window, the city lights dancing in the distance, a stark contrast to the darkness of my earlier years. One afternoon, my phone rang. Seeing an unknown number, I almost let it go to voicemail, but then answered on a whim. "Hello? Kate, this is Miss Johnson from the bank. I wanted to inform you that your mother's assets have been frozen. There's been a foreclosure on the house." I paused, taking in the information. "Thank you for letting me know," I said before hanging up. A few days later, I found myself walking through an old, familiar neighborhood. The house looked the same, but there was a for sale sign on the lawn. I felt an odd mix of nostalgia and triumph. Paula and Mike's reign of exploiting Dad's hard work had come to an end. My phone buzzed again, a text this time. It was from Mike. "You think you've won, don't you? This isn't over." I rolled my eyes. "Grow up, Mike," I muttered, texting back a simple, "Move on with your life." I put the phone away and continued down the street, my steps lighter than they had been in years. Months passed, and my life continued to flourish. One chilly morning, as I was setting up a new project for a client, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Mike standing there, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. "Kate," he began, desperation in his voice. "I need help." I sighed, stepping outside and closing the door behind me. "Mike, you've had chances, plenty of them. It's different now. We've lost everything. Mom's sick," he pleaded, his bravado gone. "Look, I can't keep being your crutch. You need to stand on your own," I said, my voice firm but not unkind. "We're family," he insisted. "Family?" I scoffed. "You never acted like it. You chose to ignore Dad's wishes, and now you're paying the price." His shoulders slumped. For a moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. "You need to go," I said finally. "Figure out your life." He nodded, tears brimming in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Kate." I watched as he walked away, a sense of finality settling over me. It wasn't my job to fix their mess anymore. I had my life to live and my own path to follow. As weeks turned into months, I started receiving updates on Paula and Mike through old neighbors. Their lives had become a cycle of struggle and regret. Strangely, I felt no satisfaction, just a profound sense of relief that I had escaped that toxic environment. One day, while taking a break from work, I found myself heading to a small, secluded park not far from my apartment. It was a quiet place, full of large oak trees and benches. I picked one near a small pond and sat down, the cool breeze soothing. As I sat there, I felt an odd sense of closeness to my father. It was almost as if his spirit was there, watching over me. I closed my eyes, taking in the peace of the moment. "I've come a long way, Dad," I whispered to the wind, feeling his presence in the rustling leaves. Opening my eyes, I looked at the world around me with a sense of accomplishment. I had fought hard for this peace, and I would cherish it. There was a future ahead, bright and full of promise, and I was ready for whatever came next.